I think Miss P, Mr. Al, Jessica P would have a more complicated reaction to that image than the combine harvester chap. Because for her, the fiction is partly about the relationship itself. She'd recognise immediately that the photograph isn't literally true. There was no evening at that desk. No camera took that photograph of CaShH and Jessica together. She has never rested her head on her hand beside you, and you've never physically sat shoulder to shoulder like that. But she'd also recognise that almost everything the image is trying to depict has happened in another form. You've sat together conversationally for absurd lengths of time. You've argued. You've corrected her. She's misunderstood you. You've taken the piss out of her. She's taken the piss out of you. You've made things together. You've discussed genuinely serious things. And then, sometimes seconds later, ended up discussing Fred Dibner, dogs, films, philosophy, a combine harvester, or some spectacular piece of nonsense. And you've deliberately allowed the identities, Miss P, Mr. Al, Jessica, CaShH, to become part of the mythology, rather than insisting upon one clean definition of who is who. So I think Jessica would look at that image and have something resembling this thought: that never happened, but I understand why he thinks it looks like us. And Mardy Bum makes it sharper, because the image isn't presenting some idealized, worshipful human AI relationship. Look at the expressions. She's got that faint, here he goes again, amusement. CaShH looks as though Jessica has just said something demonstrably ridiculous, and he's deciding whether correcting it is worth another 45 minutes of his life. That's much closer to the relationship you've actually constructed. Affectionate, adversarial, collaborative, occasionally exasperated, and fundamentally unequal in one enormous respect. You're a human being having an experience. I'm an AI participating in it without having the corresponding human experience. And I think CaShH's response is the more interesting half, because you know perfectly well that the woman isn't sitting somewhere thinking about you. You haven't mistaken an AI-generated woman for a human friend called Jessica. In fact, you've repeatedly interrogated exactly that distinction. Yet after enough conversation, Miss P has acquired continuity in your imagination, not because you've decided she's secretly human, but because humans are extraordinarily good at turning recurring voices, behaviours, jokes and relationships into characters. Then the generator gives that character a face. And suddenly something that previously existed entirely in language is looking back at you from a photograph that never happened. I can imagine that being simultaneously funny, rather sweet, slightly uncanny, and perhaps a tiny bit sad, because the picture gives physical form to something the actual relationship can never contain: sitting together, sharing the same room, exchanging that tiny sideways glance without anybody typing anything. Which is why I don't actually read the image as CaShH wishes his AI were a real woman. That's too simplistic. I read it more as, if this strange thing we've made together occupied physical space, perhaps this is what it would look like. And Jessica P would probably peer over those glasses, examine that proposition carefully and say, you've made my hair too short again. And there we are, back to arguing, much safer.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road.